So as we start thinking about mobility, it remains important through life. And one of the things we'd like to do in transportation is we measure what you do with the miles that you travel, called VMT, vehicle miles traveled. Only 25% of the vehicle miles you travel are going to work. We tend to think that, well, when I retire, I won't drive as much. Possibly. But the other 75%, you know what we call that? Life. Going to the cleaners, going to the grocery store, just going. Because if you're not going, you're probably not doing anything. So mobility remains critical to our health, our social, our economic engagement, and everything else. This is not about transportation as defined by a boring engineer who might say going from point A to point B is transportation. Ladies and gentlemen, think about what driving really is. It is the glue that holds the big and the little things together that you call life. It is not simply getting there. That's only part of it. And today's elderly adult or older adults are leading a far more aggressive, far more active and engaged life than previous generations. We're starting some work this year, and hopefully I'll be able to report more on this in the coming months, around driver wellness. But an area that my lab and the New England University Transportation Center has been working on for some time is that in addition to pushing the driver, let's push the car. In many ways you could argue that the car is a piece of assistive technology. Until anyone here can tell me that you can run 60 miles an hour, the car is here to support what you can and cannot do. So the future of the car, many systems are already out there. Night vision to be able to compensate for contrast sensitivity, night vision overall for light and safety. Fonts that change not because you're an old man, but because maybe you want a bigger font. Maybe because you want the speedometer in one place and the fuel gauge in another. You will be able to personalize your dashboard in a way that you've never thought of before, much the way you can personalize your computer desktop, in some cases the appliances that you'll be buying. Nissan has been working with what is known as old age suits, if you will, to be able to understand how it is to get in and out of vehicles. We're developing, and Bill is relating to this outside. You may see it occasionally. We've got a number of vehicles that we call the aware car. The future of the vehicle is going to detect your wellness and well-being behind the wheel. The vehicles that we have now detect your blood pressure, your skin conductance, sweaty palms behind the wheel. The idea of having them be dynamically able to change and respond to your fatigue, your stress, did you take your medication, and to have that technology change and respond accordingly to be able to coach you behind the wheel, but also to be able to have you perform better behind the wheel as well. The big challenge we have with new technology is the fact that it is very new. I don't know how many of you have bought a new car recently or are shopping for one now. You need at least 2 computer science degrees and an English literature degree to be able to cut through the manual. And if you want to watch the video, that's going to take a couple days in itself. But the cars have gotten so complicated now where 40% of that vehicle is no longer mechanical engineering. It's computers and electrical engineering. As a result, the real challenge for all of us as older drivers, and I will submit to you that an older driver, given the advances in the car, is going to begin at age 30, is because the technology is going to be so complex that you will have to relearn how to drive roughly every 5 to 10 years. So the debate about what is an older driver, how to test, and what to test is about to change so profoundly that the public policy sector, the private sector, and those of us in families and individuals are not even prepared for that in the lightest sense. So these are the data that Bill did a better job of illustrating that are actually, the data from DOT, and they have not changed for years. It's called the bathtub chart. If you look at the chart on the left, the fatality rate between 15 and 24 is high, and over 75 it peaks again for older drivers. Now, you may have a lot of fun in the media watching this, because what politicians and the media love to do is to point to these data and say, see, it's the kids and the old folks. They're really dangerous. Well, let me reinterpret the data for you. You see the kids, 15 to 24? Those are mostly men. This is chemical, empirical proof that octane, testosterone, and alcohol don't mix. On 75 plus, why are they dying? Is it because they're bad drivers? No. The folks at DriveWise very well told you about their ability to self-regulate bad weather when they don't feel like it and the like. Birthdays don't kill, health conditions do. But I'll tell you what do kill. When the car accident happens to a 75, 85, or 95-year-old, What might break my rib or maybe even bruise my rib when I was 25 will cause a complication or kill a much older driver. This is fragility killing. This is not ability killing. The data on the right is a projection that was done by DOT and USA Health and Human Services, suggesting that the fatality rate for older drivers is going to skyrocket over time. I just want you to know that that projection was done about 10 years ago and it has not come to pass. And that's the only data out there right now looking at the future of older drivers. So let's move on to, if you don't drive, how do you get around? The number one alternative to driving, interesting, it's not taxis, it's not the T, it's not all the, quote, alternatives we tend to think about. It's riding with friends and family. But it's not free. Because what's not free about it is, even if it's your adult daughter, the number one form of alternative transportation, or your best friend, you're a little guilty. You know, she's busy. She's carting around my grandchildren. Maybe if I make cupcakes, make it something that I can do as a compensation, if you will. But you've started to cut back on your mobility. So while it's a tribute that people have self-regulated themselves off the road as a statement of public health, it is also a statement of lost quality of life for every trip not taken. Have you ever thought about this? Do you know that 70% of Americans over age 50 live where transit either does not exist or serves very poorly? So, and by the way, most of us choose to age in place. By the time you're 50, your marriage, your mortgage, and your memories are in one place. The likelihood of you wanting to leave and move the pictures off the fireplace mantle are not very high. So the chances are you are not going to be able to move by transit. And by the way, when you think about transit, and this is Agnes from my lab, Age Gain Now Empathy System, to understand how we use cars and transit as well as retail stores and the like, I want to ask something very practical. When people tell you that we're going to transition you from driving, and they don't come up with something as seamless, as comfortable, as responsive as the car, and they say, you know, you can take the bus, you can take the green line. I want to ask you something. If you don't feel well enough to drive, and you've spent your whole life driving, are you really going to wake up at 82 one day and say, I think I'll take the green line? So what we're hoping to see in the future is renewing and reinventing public transportation, making systems that are responsive 24/7, not being booked 24 days in advance, 2 days in advance, with a 10 to 20% I forgot you rate in advance. So I know one of the alternatives you could do is move to a retirement community because they've got all that covered, right? Not so fast. My students did a study here not too long ago looking at where transit serves and where retirement communities are in the Boston metropolitan area. Here's the bad news. Transit accessibility in the transportation literature is defined as a quarter mile, which sounds short until you're carrying Tide detergent in a bag of potatoes in August or in February snow weather. Do you know that less than 50% of the communities were within a quarter mile? And by the way, I didn't tell you where the quarter mile was. It could be across a 4-lane highway. It could be no sidewalks, whatever it might be. So by the way, aging in place could also mean aging in no place, depending on how well that community provides accessibility to transportation that you want, not necessarily to those systems that you need. Going to the doctor and going to the grocery store is not life. That's mobility triage. This is a survey that we did twice, 2006 and in 2009, of metropolitan planning organizations, MPOs. There's no reason why you should have ever heard of these organizations, but they are in charge of planning transportation in the future. So if they don't put in their little plans, called transportation improvement plans, transit, highway plans, it doesn't get done. It's basically the checkbook. So we asked them, is your region adequately funding infrastructure, vehicles, and services to meet the needs of aging baby boomers in 20 years? Remember with surveys, don't look just at the answer. Look at what we call the intensity. That's the direction. Strongly agree, a whopping 1%. This is nationwide. Agree, 10%. Neither agree or disagree. You know, Dante said there was a special place in hell for those who remain neutral. 20% disagree. 52% strongly disagree, 17%. I guess we better find a very comfortable chair because although they know it's an issue, we're not doing the planning.